Well, we are glad that you're here today. This is just a little bit of background, kind of managing expectations a little bit. You know, as many of you know, and many of you probably have been involved with a series of riverfront plans over the years. And we've spent a lot of time, got a lot of public involvement with that process, worked with a lot of entities, and I think Steve's going to be up in a moment and kind of recognize the different groups that are all involved. I want to do a quick shout out to the aldermen that are here. I see Alderman Tompkins, Alderman Mattson, Alderman McGinnis, who else we got? Oh, Alderman Dickman and Alderman Dunn, as I just saw him somewhere, and Alderman Grip. And Ambrose. Wow, they're all here. Good to see everybody. That's great. And again, that shows the commitment that the city has for this whole process. We realize that we've been entrusted as a city, represent all of you in the community, representing all of you on the plans for our riverfront. But we realize if it's going to be the best if we all come together and work together as a community. So we've gotten a lot of feedback. We have, in fact, a riverfront plan that we've been committing to, and some of the things you've seen already in place, where we've cleaned off various areas. The riverboat has been removed. There's a lot of work that has been done, and some initial plans that have been laid out and shared. But what's next? And one of the things that was also always included in this was a collaboration with the Figge and with the arts community to make sure that's an element with this. And I think to that end, we realized, working with the Downtown Partnership and with the Figge, and number of city staff, I think Alderman McGinnis and Alderman Grip were involved with that as well, our city administrator on the task force that was involved with this process. But the Downtown Partnership and others came together and said, we're willing to help fund the next step to kind of put a face on this. And I want to also thank Zach Peterson, because as one of our city staff has been actively involved in this, and he's active throughout this whole process as well. So the good news is this is a city project, and it is always should be a good collaborative effort with members of our community. And that's what this is about. So we really want to thank the Figge and the Downtown Partnership, but many. When we talk about, when you see this exciting enhancement, and it's basically fleshing out the ideas that we've come up with as a community, putting a little more face on what that looks like. And RDG has been actively involved. We want to thank them, of course, for their work, and you're going to see the results of this in just a moment or two. But I'm going to come back at the end and summarize, but more importantly, to realize this is a community initiative. The private sector, the public sector, not-for-profit sector, everybody coming together to make this happen. None of those entities alone can do this. We need everybody coming together, so we thank all those who are involved to date. And with that, I think we're going to move forward and show what this looks like, shows the next steps, and then feel out at the end, where do we go from here? So with that, I want to thank you all again for being here. This is really exciting. You're going to see some exciting information today, but it's more importantly an extension of the excitement that we have for our riverfront, because it is really a treasure for us, and we understand that, of how we protect it and move on from here.
There's a lot of great things going on right now, and like he mentioned, it's great to see such a great turnout interested in the future of our riverfront. You didn't know there was going to be an opening act, did you? So I'm here to warm up the crowd, but since we have a lot of people here that may or may not be familiar with what we have, it's best to provide a background of where we've come from, where we are now, and where we intend to go with this project. You'll find that they all work out pretty well together and cohesively, well thought out. Years of planning are coming to fruition. This is a key juncture in what we're approaching in the life of the project. Let's see here, where do I need to aim this? Okay. Project background. So what we're doing started in earnest in 2004 with the RiverVision master plan. Most of you in this room have probably heard of it in some stretch of their lifespan with it as a good quad citizens. But it had a follow-up study in 2014 which evolved the plan further. When I throw up some text in here, key things to keep in mind as we move forward. So. Prepared by Hargraves and Associates after a RFP process to develop a publicly vetted consensus plan for our riverfront. This has been approved, both plans, by our council as an official amendment to the comprehensive plan. So as such, it guides the policy and decision-making process between roughly Tremont Avenue and Credit Island. So this is from 2004 overview. Most of this riverfront is covered in here, various project zones, each with their own unique features to it. The area we're going to focus on today is what's known as Main Street Landing, which is part of RiverVision. So they're both kind of synonymous, but Main Street Landing is taking it one step further towards actual development. So the key components of 2004 came across a series of green rooms was the focus. So each room had its own unique purpose and idea behind it. In 2014, another study was brought forth as a way of integrating a potential public-private partnership into the mix. Just have a, okay. Oh, I guess we don't have the laser pointer. We'll go without it, it's good. So consider RiverVision 2004 as a 30,000 foot view. And this is a closer in look at some of the details of what these outdoor rooms might look like. They have common themes amongst the two. Embracing the views, we got an amazing asset out here that most cities in the world would die for. Develop in a series of outdoor rooms, the common theme that is the thread. Connect with the water, interface between getting the city and the river integrated and tied together. Activating the space. By that meaning place, a place to hold events, a place to be, the place to be. And exploring public-private partnerships as a way of getting more bang for the buck and really going that extra mile to make this special. So in terms of developing the vision, we've been through a lot, and I've used this version of presentation in the past, but we're more or less in a 7-front battle right now, all consecutively occurring in terms of site development. Confirming the RiverVision site program, the stuff that's in RiverVision, compiling a site development strategy, how to develop it, creating consistency amongst all these rooms, clearing the site. We have a lot of leftover parking lots from the former casino. Constructing project phases, conceptualizing future improvements, and collaborating to provide the wow factor. First idea, confirming the program. As it was left in 2014, site plan, outdoor rooms integrated with various programmatic features, it distills to these basic ideas right here. Preserving the corridors from the city, the street corridors to the river, not accenting that and acknowledging that, that view. Gateways, introducing the site and integrating that in the urban fabric of downtown. Outdoor rooms, and I can't take credit for this, my boss, a city engineer, talked about rooms and hallways. So we've got these various components in rooms and hallways tying together, all with unique focal points at the river interface. So the plan evolves, just like 2014 is an update to 2004. Things change, priorities change, cultures change. So that must be taken into account. Here we are 5 years after the 2014 plan. So the football diagram here is kind of the update of what's going on here. So of note, green are relevant areas. Red are areas of the 2014 program that probably don't quite fit in this context. And that's a judgment call based on vetting amongst the public and internally. And the biggest note is this big old arrow there of council setting the public-private partnership that came through with the Raiffeisen and dock development. Since that went through, we were able to reevaluate and brainstorm that near the Skybridge is probably a more appropriate location for that. In-house, we developed this evolving strategy. With the Raiffeisen project out of the mix, it opens up for more possibilities in that area, including an event lawn, natural area. 2004 called out an Eagle Watch. Why not introduce that back into the mix and really play off the dam interface? Skybridge Plaza and some of those key focal points that are brought up in that urban framework. So compiling a development strategy is based on a monetary figure. In 2014 dollars, RiverVision was estimated at $35.56 million. Construction's just going up every year, an escalation of approximately 3% a year. So in absence of having this money up front, it means we've got a phase. So right now the development strategy is to take each block face and develop them according to the needs and publicly vetted mechanisms to develop these rooms and hallways. In order to create consistency, understanding that we are going to be developing in pockets here and there, which match our available income, a set of design guidelines was established as far as creating a uniform look to the project. So these various phases might come forth in various time periods, but they're going to have the same look. So this is where we got in touch with RDG. We had a request for proposals going out, and RDG interviewed very well and had experience in this area. And they developed the kit of parts for the site, so what the future park's going to look like. So they addressed things like they took the existing inventory, what we have now, materials that are native to the area or in the area of downtown, and put them together and compiled the unique look for the park. So they looked at furnishings, what the bike racks look like, bollards, site lighting, materials of the pavers, taking into account the historic brick of downtown, seat walls and concrete styles, and as well as a plant palette for future development, understanding things like flood resiliency. It also had a branding strategy, and here's an idea of wayfinding for the project. Now, going on since 2015 is site demolition. Since the Roughheisen project dock development fell through, immediately at 2015 we've been on the clock demolishing the site and all the existing infrastructure. So roughly from June 2016 when the casino left, all that parking lot left, got demolished, filled in with clean fill, good dirt for future improvements, filled with topsoil as a good growth medium for plant material. Casino boat left, and the seating came in, except for where we had some energetic individual do donuts there in the wintertime. But it's now blocked off, so hopefully that won't be a problem. So the demolition of the remaining casino infrastructure, the port cochere went away, and the barge got sent to Keokuk. And with that, we were able to clear the remainder of the casino infrastructure and set the table for future improvements. As far as constructing site improvements, taking a look at the RiverVision plan of 2014, the notion came to kick off the first phase, which was worked with our current budget. It also worked with merging the garden and parking lot theme from RiverVision to create a flexible event space. Has a lower project development cost, capitalizes on our local food truck scene, which is now, that's how the culture changes within the city. That wasn't a thing 5 years ago, and now it's thriving, and it's something quite remarkable that's happened in that time frame. It's the link between downtown and the riverfront, and provides that necessary activity space. We're trying, as it starts to create that synergy of being the place to be. So with a few months out, we're back at it again in July after we designed the event space. Back demolishing. I should mention that we got off to a late project start because we had a flood. So mid-July we're off and running again. Seat walls were constructed. Utility work. Some of the most boring stuff had to happen here. Utility work is essential. Concrete flat work, setting the stage for the future improvements. October, another flood. There were 3 total this summer and into the fall. So we left it last at getting utility infrastructure in for the streetscape. So the water mains are in and those kind of things, ready to hit it hard when the weather finally breaks, if it ever breaks, I don't know. So there's a shot post-flood. So that gave us a little strategy of how to treat when the flood inundates it, it leaves a silt. There's going to be water mains hooked up, we can hose it off, and here's what we're aiming towards. Coming soon this summer. Here's just some renderings. It's a nighttime environment as well. Place for events. When it's not being used as an event, it can be used as a parking lot. High level of finish. Nice paver treatments. Place for festivals. Place for the food truck scene. Place for a portable stage. The project's arranged in such a way that a mobile stage can be set up and have a centerpiece to what's going on there. So 0.5.5, I added a different C to the 7 C's, and it's a conundrum that we're currently having underway. So it's a project funding reality that we have with the city. In the absence of supplemental funding sources such as grants, private donations, sponsorships, City of Davenport invests $1 million in bonds in the capital improvement plan for park improvements. In 2014, that equates, the park was estimated at $35 million, which has done nothing but go up at that point. So at that rate, at 2014 rate, assuming no inflation, our full build-out is going to be in 35 years. Breaking it down in a cost perspective, it's roughly $2.9 million per acre. Each block face is roughly 1 acre. So it assumes each block face can be addressed every 3 years. That doesn't include design fees in terms of getting it all together to be a constructible, biddable package. And a way of testing this is our flex event space, which is just under an acre, 2.1 million encumbered to date with the remaining 500,000. So it's right on target with that. It's a little under what the average budget is for the project. So leveraging project funding. In prospect of a 35-year construction timeline, if that's undesired, it's very essential to provide additional mechanisms to achieve this successful outcome for future, as well as current generations to enjoy. I'd love to be able to take my kids out there on the riverfront and have a world-class amenity there, and hopefully I will be able to achieve that before they're too old and move on somewhere else. But they'll come back because I came back. It's good. So the time is now to explore the means necessary to attract and cultivate these partnerships. And that's one of the reasons why we're gathered here today. So in the meantime, the city is going to continue to apply for and secure supplemental grant funding. Good plans get funded. REAP, Build, CAT, Iowa Great Place grants. We will go after those and get that supplemental funding there. But for best results, this is part of the picture. Leveraging those funds can, in addition to other mechanisms, can make something great even better. Funding can be secured from other sources, corporate sponsorship, private donations, charitable organizations, and other outside-the-box solutions, which we probably haven't even thought of at this point. Hopefully breaking this argumentative cycle that we're kind of stuck in right now, where at the city, here at the city, we want to implement these visionary plans being proposed, but our financial resources are somewhat limited to what's considered acceptable from the citizenry. Must not compromise our ability to deliver essential services either. So we got a lot we got to do here with our limited funds. In order to achieve a successful outcome, we need additional partners to come to the table and make this a reality. Private sector, on the other hand, we need to provide to the private sector a product that they can get behind, back, and work with the city and work with various partnerships to make this happen. They're interested in contributing. I've heard that somewhere, but they don't know how sometimes. So it may be as simple as that, breaking down those barriers, which is why we're here today. So the final two of the C's in my presentation deal with conceptualization, future improvements, and collaboration to provide the wow factor. That's why we have partners on board, and that's why I'm excited that the Figge and Downtown Partnership came together to provide some of these ideas, a way of thinking through what we've done before, setting the stage, and making something pretty good already to make it, provide that extra wow factor. So RDG and Dahlquist Design Studio, introduced in a second, was retained by Figge Art Museum to enhance the site by integrating public art into the site narrative that we've already provided, that basic framework, provide an additional wow as a means of complementing previous design initiatives that we've done so far. Developing a backstory also was one of their charges that can be used regionally. We're all quad citizens here too, and through this underlying framework, what you'll be able to see could possibly be attributed and copied up and down the riverfront amongst our shared riverfronts. These findings can also be used as an additional tool to help aid the city in securing project partnerships and funding. So it's some pretty pictures to take a look at and get some excitement and get that generated into more of a cohesive, go to it, let's make this happen. You'll have the option though of integrating this into the plan or not. There's no risk to the City of Davenport with this. Their ideas, pretty good ideas, but that's my bias. So in the site planning, landscape architectural design, this is my designer geek stuff. We have various levels of the projects we've done thus far. RiverVision 2004 is way on the conceptual end. RiverVision 2014 comes back into it, a little bit more detailed. And then the Dahlquist plan, which is about to be unveiled here, is taking it to that next level, getting from that 30,000 foot view down to something that is very close to pulling the trigger between planning and construction plans. Whereas what we're doing thus far with our Main Street Landing Block N5 flexible event space is happening. It's under construction, and final acceptance will be this summer. So with that, I'd like to, oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to turn over to Tim Schiffer, who would be so kind as to let us know what he's been up to. Thanks, Tim.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I first, before I introduce David and Kyle, I want the steering committee for this proposal to stand up. We forgot to recognize them in the first round. But the plan that you're going to see today was developed over the last year and a half by RDG Dahlquist Studio. But we had, first of all, kind of our little committee of Kyle Carter from the Downtown Partnership, Corey Spiegel from the city, Steve Ahrens from the Riverfront Commission, Dee Brummer from our board, and myself. And we put together a larger steering committee to work with David and his team on developing the plan from their concept to what you're going to see today. So I'd like that committee just to stand, just so I know you're all awake. Mary Lou, stand up. Anyway. And just as a way of introduction, the way I got involved in this is I was here for the 2014 Hargrave study, and it was always kind of intimated to me that the parking lot across River Drive was going to be a sculpture park, and somehow I was going to be responsible for finding these sculptures that were going to go in the sculpture park. And over the time I was here, when the river would come in and I'd look out and my sculpture park would be under a foot or two of water, I was like, something seems wrong with this picture. And so in talking to people about the riverfront, it seemed like maybe there was a deeper way to integrate art into this riverfront and to really try to make this riverfront the exceptional place that it deserves to be and that it should be, and that it is already, but it can be so much more. And along the way, I became familiar with the work of David Dahlquist, who is an artist primarily, but who has an art studio within RDG, and RDG has an ongoing relationship as a planner for the city. So we really brought David over just to take a look. And from there, we engaged David and his team to look at the whole project from an artistic point of view and from the point of view of a group that does these kind of transformational projects all over the country. And personally, I can say that it has been a wonderful experience to work with them and to see the depth of thought that they have put into this project. So I hope you all will feel the same way. And so I'd like to introduce Dahlquist and Kyle Carter from the Downtown Partnership.
Well, I will keep my remarks very brief because we want to get to the meat and potatoes here. So, David, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to act as the color commentary throughout this part here and speak to some of the very local issues that I know you care about, but I want to let David present what was his and his organization's big idea.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Let me begin by saying that this is a rare opportunity. And we have really had a wonderful experience being part of it. So thank you to Tim and the Figge, the Riverfront Commission, Dee, the city, Mayor, thank you, Kyle, and I'm grateful for Zach helping put this in context because, as you know, there's a lot of history, and we love history. There's not only the history of design and what's happened in the last 100 years along your riverfront, there's ancient history there. And so as Tim mentioned, this began over a year and a half ago, and I think we were here together as a group. We got so many wonderful responses, emails, photographs, people sending books to us and poetry. And so we knew we had tapped into something that was really special. And we gave it the extra effort because as we got further and further into it, we realized how important it was, not only as artists and designers, but for the whole city of Davenport. This is a collaborative effort. I'm a public artist and designer, as Tim mentioned. I'm also a principal with RDG. So I get to play with the most creative people I've ever worked with. Landscape architects, lighting designers, community and regional planners, hydrologists. We all came together on this. So it is by no means just me. We try to immerse ourselves as deeply as we possibly can in the process. Not the product necessarily, because I think that the product is an outcome of the due diligence that we do, the work that we do. And so research, and sometimes I call it artistic fact-finding, in a holistic manner to create a concept. And even that, you know, what you're about to see are concepts. They're not built yet. They may look like they are, because with technology these days, we're kind of used to the home and garden TV phenomena. You wiggle your nose and it's already done. These are concepts. And so what is a concept? I think it's important to understand that we tried to look deeper than a theme. We tried to look deeper than the kind of surface level of what you might consider in various parks and locations that you've been to. There was something that needed to really drive this conceptually, and you're very fortunate. You have an asset that most people don't have. They would pay dearly for it. It's right there. It's the river. You don't have to scratch your head very much to figure out what you're going to hang your hat on. So with that, You've had a bit of an introduction about how this got started. One of the other caveats, one of the other charters as we developed the original scope, it was never intended to place one piece of sculpture. It wasn't a matter of where do you put the big thing? Where do you put the iconic piece of sculpture? Where does it sit? It wasn't about that. It's about integration. It's about looking at that entire area, not as so much even as a thing, but as an experience. And so what we've tried to create is an overall experience. Matt Niebuhr, a visual artist and architect, Doug Adamson, Doug Hansen, Renee Thomas, Ryan Peterson in Dubuque, many other people that worked on this. And I'm sorry they couldn't be here today, but I just wanted to let you know. That's a big space. And when we came here, it was, you might say, bald. And it's a blank canvas. And so it's the art of the possible. Quite a panorama. Especially with the casino gone, something is just waiting to happen. That's a view that a lot of us don't even see from the other side, from Rock Island, looking over at the riverfront, but a great view of the riverfront of Davenport. And this was the concept. We had many different alternatives, but this was the concept. And we tried different things, and it was vetted in a series of meetings, and this is the one that rose to the top. The idea of the river flooding, inundation that you have, the changing currents, the patterns of the water, the experience literally from the bridge to the dam. Although our main project area was Harrison to Pershing, this experience that informs scale and color and lighting is as big as the bridge to the dam. This was one of the concepts. We often look at poetry to help us as an operative, the whole idea of turbulence. You could go to the riverbank right now. Maybe it's a little frozen right now, but you might see some eddies. And the idea of an eddy and that pattern that is in almost every culture's consciousness. So this was a narrative that we synthesized, and we like to write. You could probably put a book together from this concept development, but I'm just going to share this with you because I think it captures what we were trying to get to. The undulating currents and whirling eddies of the Mississippi are echoed in the contours of the riverfront, offering new destinations for recreation and reflection, entertainment, and events. The concept builds upon previous studies, as Zach mentioned, the Hargrave RiverVision and his own work, to connect the riverfront with Downtown Davenport and the Figge Art Museum, inviting people to gather at the river's edge and to explore multi-use venues. Sculptural frameworks are thoughtfully integrated throughout, engaging people with beautiful views of their community and realigning perspectives. The Sky Bridge regains relevance as a primary link to the pavilion, sky deck, event lawn, and more. So these were some of the strategies that I've already mentioned. River's Edge, an experience as large as the bridge to dam, the frames, which are sculptural forms that function on a variety of different levels, a new destination that would change the perception of what has been there or what is missing, responsive to the existing utilities, and achieving a character both day and night, wanting to make that connection as real with the downtown urban core to get people there at night. Lighting is a crucial factor, safety, ambiance, dimension. So here it is with the casino, but this is showing you utility, infrastructure, having to arrange things to stay out of the way, so to speak. This was a very early conceptual sketch, the idea of the rooms or areas, the idea of trying to connect this entire experience in a longer, linear fashion. This was another reiteration of that. One of the things we heard from so many people, get us to the water, open up the river, touch it. And so this was an effort to help seize that. It's changed, as you'll see. Resilience. We also looked at the last 100 years of flooding or more. And so one of the other things we heard was, how could we use the river even in a flood condition? And so thinking about how that could be made in terms of changing elevations, we had great photographs of people out there literally with waders during a flood fishing off the river's edge. How could you use that landscape even during a flood event? So, as Zach mentioned, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. Unless you were so bold as to say we're going to do it all at one time. That's also not a bad idea, but of course it comes down to money. So it's got to be phased. And this starts to break up those areas into identifiable reasons in terms of some kind of sequence. And so color-coded as to identify them. Some of those phases, as Zach mentioned, have already started. Your flex event lot, your flex event space, and parking lot, ongoing. So here's an axonometric view of that entire park experience. To give you a connection to LeClaire Park, to take you all the way down to the dam, to take you on both sides of the railroad, to connect the Sky Bridge. You've got this amazing piece of architecture, and we heard, well, how do we use it? Where does it go? It needed a new purpose. And so this gives you a really incredible new purpose for the Sky Bridge. Connection and lighting. So we're going to go through some of these areas one at a time. They're all labeled, and after this presentation, and we have some questions, we'll have some boards up, and you can look at this in a little closer, more granular way. So, do you work from left to right? Do you work from the middle out? The old adage, you've really only got one chance to make a first impression. And so, revitalizing the Sky Bridge, connecting to the main Great Lawn and event space, repurposing what was for the casino. Now, you'll see a sky deck, you'll see a pavilion structure. This is a multi-purpose space. Again, remember, it's a concept, but this offers the opportunity for an incredible lantern on the river, a piece of dramatic architecture. And so you could have a wedding event, rental venues, restaurants, bars, entertainment, any number of things to function in so many different ways, but it becomes a destination. One of the other things that we kept hearing over and over, the view, the view. And when we got all of these individual responses, it was interesting because everybody's idea of the view was different. Some people wanted to go up and literally look down at the water. Some people wanted to take the long view and look at the river in a different way, different perspective. The view across the river. Changes in elevation become really important to this overall plan that you see, this proposal. And so there are many different vantage points and perspectives that you'll be able to experience the river by. Another phase, the area around and the connection. These hallways, as Zach mentioned, are really important also to maintaining the view that was established here as a city, that urban grid, a long, long time ago. And so those streets now function in a variety of ways. They not only maintain the view to the river, but they become a promenade. They become a multi-purpose place to have all kinds of different events, large and small. The main lawn, based on the shape of an eddy and the undulation that erodes the river, but now functions to connect to the pavilion and the sky bridge and the sky deck.
So this is one where I'd like to chime in really quickly. You'll see the sky deck concept that's here. We are constantly searching for that balance between commercial use, public use. This is a prime example of how we can very easily incorporate a modest restaurant space. Everybody wants to grab some food, grab a beer, have an experience on that riverfront. And this concept that they've come up with, I think, is brilliant in the sense that you could have a wedding on the top, you can have it catered on the bottom. This is where you could have a private business with a lease with the city of some kind that operates that space. So there's a real opportunity here for a public-private partnership. But as you'll see on the event lawn that connects this, you get into the framework. And this is something that, this concept that we think we could see repeated potentially throughout the Quad Cities riverfronts. But this is very much of the artistic front, and I want David to explain its inspiration, but I wanted to connect the dots for folks that, you know, this is a kind of a key moment here where you start to see the traction of all these ideas come together.
The frame, and you'll see some other images of it in a moment, it owes its development to a variety of different things. There's a famous quote of Shakespeare's, to hold a mirror up to nature. And that's how we experience ourselves, the moment that we see ourselves in nature. And so there's a moment of reflection in that framework. I found some old stereopticons, you know, this double image photographs, and you hold them and it comes together as a single image of the Mississippi River. It's a device, both formal and a metaphor, to be able to allow you imaginatively to experience the river. And so it provides seating, that's a functional level. It provides lighting, that's another functional level. It connects based on the width of each of those streets to seize the view and maintain the view. All of those things are overlapped conceptually to come up with a form that is both sculpture, architecture. I think if there's one common denominator in all of our work, it's trying to bring three things together: story, structure, and sight. And that's what those frames do. Another phase, upstream, river edge, promenade, and public art. Being able to understand the relationship between nature and an organic edge and the rectilinear edge of the city. Give you an idea of the terracing. In your library, in your archives, we saw some fantastic photographs of the boats just pulled up on the bank with the gangplanks thrown out for people to walk up and down on, and the water would rise and fall naturally. We saw a design that was proposed in 1913 that did much of the same kinds of things. So people have been thinking about this for over 100 years.
And I think, too, as a practical matter, so you understand what you're looking at, where the frame is at is the current edge of the park. So this is coming inland, not outward, just for context there. I think that's important. Somebody was bound to ask the question, so I'm trying to beat you to it. Continue.
Revised River's Edge, the promenade, and public art integration. Another phase, playgrounds, natural discovery area, and the promenades. You see even the paving pattern of that promenade, of that street, is in a way, homage to the flotsam and jetsam that comes up every year with flooding. The driftwood, the debris, the little plants and trees creates an amazing pattern as it washes up and then recedes as a texture. The bridge, able to use potentially during the flood, so allowing water to go into those recesses or bioswales and still be able to access the riverfront. Connections to the river drive, playground, natural area, discovery zones. I think there's opportunities for all kinds of different play experiences. They don't have to be the commercial rainbow bright play set. They can be things that are part of nature.
And I recognize, I know the city has already begun to do a lot of thinking about playgrounds and how we can activate the space. One of the key things about this whole plan is that you can build all the great stuff in the world, but if there's not a reason to have, if there's not activity there, it doesn't draw people. So that playground aspect is very key, and it's something that I know is high on that priority list of the cities. And I agree that, like the other elements of this, it brings people to it. And we can program these spaces. So that's another thing I want you to keep in context throughout this, is that programming of any of these spaces is critical. But things like playgrounds and the urban lounge, which we'll touch on in a second, are a reason to have people down there on any given time, on any given day.
As Kyle points out, an experience like this, a park like this, it has to be multi-generational, and it has to offer more to do than one and done. It has to have a variety of things in terms of programming, such that you come back and you have different experiences and you bring visitors there at different times of the day. Connection to LeClaire Park, a river access boat launch, one possible location for that. Maintaining your restroom facility and the inn as artifacts, almost like the flood record, although they might be able to move slightly in terms of location, but they would be part of this design.
And one of the reasons that you don't see more detail on the river access piece is that the engineering of that's very challenging. It's certainly not impossible, though, but we wanted to make sure that the further away from the roller dam you get, the more plausible it becomes. This is what we believe to be a logical location for something of that nature to happen around Harrison Street. It would require more thought, more engineering, more study, but there's a reason you don't see a grand, dock of some kind there, because we just weren't able to get that far in this particular plan, but wanted to make sure it was clear that was the location to seriously consider that. Especially in this design with Main Street being more of that event lawn space and moving that further downriver.
You'll see the small label there, potential future docking facility. That could be moved to the most desirable location functionally. Another view of the overall. If you start to look at the geometry, the architecture of the dam, which is an amazing thing, which isn't lighted at night, that's the most incredible theatrical backdrop a city could ever have. This plan and the frames start to take another cue from the construction and the rhythm of the dam. Again, LeClaire Park, that is lower imposition, less to do, planting, a way to connect that without a lot of heavy infrastructure, softscape. The urban lounge, one of the comments was, well, I want to have a cocktail while I watch my kids play. Seating. Yeah, now that's a initiated family, I'll say.
That's true.
Different experiences. And this is connected to downtown, seating, formal and informal. Variety of hard and softscapes, topographic variations, planting diversity, urban context, and seating.
And again, this is directly out of the city's current planning. This was a part of RiverVision. It's something that the city had been working on. Just reiterating one more time that this is part of what we've already been doing. Continuity
and how all of these areas could be connected with an idea of flow. And then what we're calling a mirror plaza, again, could be used in a variety of ways. Reflecting pool, connection to the Figge, a sentinel piece of public artwork, skating in the winter.
Yeah, so this is where I would invoke Millennium Park in Chicago. For those of you who are familiar with the zero depth water feature that they have there that is just packed with kids and people constantly, this is, again, a concept. And so, but keep that in mind when you see something like this. Maybe water pours down that wall. Maybe it has ice skating in the wintertime. It has that iconic piece of art. If you'll recall, the bean was the last part that went into Millennium Park, not the first. So there's lots of infrastructure here that we can help create to get to that point, but just trying to provide a little bit more of where that vision is coming from and why we think that connection makes sense here next to the Figge.
The piece of sculpture that you see there is really intended as a placeholder. It's not the piece of sculpture. It signifies that it would be a fantastic location for a piece. We were even saying, related to the Crown Fountain in Chicago, wouldn't it be great if you could have one of Plentz's giant heads? But it's poised for many different things. I think this shot also, I think this view starts to give you an idea of all the different textures. And those textures really make a difference in terms of your experience there. Wanting to walk it, Saturday morning, ride it on a bicycle. It's all of those things that are trying to happen together. Connection with the Figge, cultural corridor kind of connection. And then an overall. And so these are a series of phases related to the areas that we just went over, including the ongoing initiatives that you have in place. So, question, how do you go about this and what does it represent per phase? We'll come back to this in a few minutes, but this is an opinion of cost, a conceptual opinion of cost, and you have to arrive at it through a basis of reality. So, the scale model, square footage, square foot cost of architecture, grading, plant materials, concrete, all goes into an equation in order to get to each of those phases. I would say, and as you, I'm sure, appreciate, you could pick any one and you could spend anything. But this is a reality. This is something that I think is achievable for these amounts of money. Now, if you hire a starchitect, a Renzo Piano, you could do a $150 million pavilion. But I don't think that that is necessarily the intent. I only mention that to say that I think there's a desire to maintain a high level of quality and a high level of finish and do it in a way that can actually work.
So I think this is a good point to interject, and we'll come back to dollars somewhat later too, that this community built River Renaissance in the early 2000s. There are some of the folks in this room that helped make that happen. It was a $113 million investment that built the building we're sitting in, built the River Music Experience, built the Sky Bridge, 2 parking ramps, new Venture Center, a long list. And you know, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was considered impossible too. And we built it, and we built it well, and we're literally sitting in it right now. This dollar amount, while not chump change, is not impossible. I think that this is entirely reasonable, but it will take an all-hands-on-deck approach. The private sector, the public sector, creative funding, and looking for corporate sponsorships. There are so many ways that we can attack this, but we've attacked it before, and we did it wildly successfully. In fact, when that was voted on by the county back in the early 2000s, it passed with a huge percentage of support. And look what happened. It launched the development that we said it would. Downtown Davenport in the year 2000 was a very different place. And this was what started it. River Renaissance was what launched that development to what became the residential development, what became the commercial development, and what is becoming our next phase of office, and now, hopefully, the next phase of RiverVision as well. So I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I also don't want it to be lost on people that these are big price tags, but they also are big ideas, and we're capable of doing them if we want to.
It's an investment, of course, but it's an imaginative leap in terms of what can happen. I look at our own city where I live in Des Moines. We had a terribly blighted area for years and years and years. And a gentleman by the name of Mario Gondelsonis, a designer, came in and proposed, in effect, what is a central park. And that is now the Papa John Sculpture Park. And at one time, every single building adjacent to that park was empty. And now, every single building is full, and those command the highest rents of any property in downtown Des Moines. Because people came there. People wanted to be there. And art was only one of the reasons. It was a great reason, but it was only one of the reasons.
It's a good point. And locally here, imagine the ground transportation center where the bus depot currently is. The opportunity to develop that site is incredible. There's other sites up and down the edge of River Drive on the north side that its views over top of this would be spectacular. This is economic development. It is not simply a park development, albeit a spectacular one. There are, the connecting dots moment here is that what we're trying to do is develop an entire downtown. We're trying to develop an economy, and we're doing it in grand fashion in the event that we were able to make this happen, or at least parts of this to get going. So I know we have some more slides.
Well,
so
with
I'll
that said, let's try to
here.
put you in the park.
Yeah, there's some amazing visuals here that start to make this a little bit more realistic when you see it at the ground level.
I heard one response, I wanted to get married at the end of the Sky Bridge, but I could only have 4 people out there, and it was closed. And so now there's a place where you can have the 150 or 250 or 400 person wedding out on the sky deck. This great lawn might hold as many as 2,500 people. There could be an attached raised stage venue there that would transition into the pavilion. That's an interesting vantage point, being able to look down from the sky deck. A new adventure to walk your sky bridge. Even a greater significance to your fountain, to your memorial. Using the design guidelines that Zach mentioned, the lighting, furniture, integrated throughout, ramped glass railings to maintain views and transparency. Could even be a water wall that comes down the inside face of that so that you could hear water as part of the experience. This line that runs kind of diagonally through the center of this image, that is intended to signify the railroad barrier, the railroad guard. And it could be made out of weathering steel. That, I believe, in our thought process, would be a great opportunity for local artists that could do designs, punctuate and perforate that metal so that you'd see through it, but it would still channel sound and be a safety barrier to the railroad.
That's a good point regarding sound. You know, this plan would still require, I think, to make sure that we move forward with the railroad in trying to get the railroad quiet zones established, to make sure that, you know, that we love our railroad, but it's also very loud sometimes when the guy's railing on the horn from one end of the downtown to the other. We'd need to establish, you know, a better connection there. So part of this plan, I think, is it's inherent that we get that done. And, you know, this is another spectacular view, too, that I think gives you context on those frames and how they line up with the rest of this as well. And I know we're wrapping up here.
We'll get to a highlighted one of these frames. Those could also be perforated with information from the history of Davenport. We even showed an example of a water wall that is a fountain where you can write words in the water by virtue of pumps and valves. You could actually program pieces of literature that would be made of water that might spill in one of those frames. Destinations. The panoramic snapshot of the river that you get to enter into. Looking back into your city. Thank you. I look forward to being able to answer your questions.
Yeah, and thank you, David. And you know, first of all, you know, on a very personal level, I think this is spectacular. I hope the community is as excited as we are about this. But at the end of the day, it's a concept. It's a proposal. The reason that the whole city council is here and all of these different organizations are here, you're all seeing this at the same time. My own board of directors, who paid for this with the Figge, had not seen this. We wanted to make sure that the public saw this at the same time that we did and all of our elected officials, and that means very much to me. I think that we have an amazing opportunity here from both an economic development point of view, from a community development point of view, to tackle something that otherwise no one of us could do on our own. And so it's going to take a lot of collaboration. The mayor has spoken to that very eloquently. This is a team effort. And the Downtown Partnership Board voted this morning to say very clearly and very publicly that it will be at the table of fundraisers to help lead the model of what this looks like. How do we raise that money? What does it look like? We wanted to be the first to raise our hand and said, we know that's going to be very hard, and we know we are going to be at the table with City Hall to make sure that you're not out alone on this thing. But there's going to be a lot of other private partners that we're going to need, and this process is just beginning. So with that, I will close out, and we will answer questions. Mayor, unless you'd like to say something before we do.
David, thank you. Kyle, but everybody in this room, thank you. You're all representing groups that represent citizens that are in fact bringing these ideas forward. One of the things that I think we in Davenport have to commit to is a plan. There's been a lot of plans, and people say, we need a plan, and we start over and over and do that. I think the reality of it is that this has stayed very close to the plans that were done in 04 and 14, and now this is the next generation of that. Not a new plan, it's the next generation in bringing that forward. And as both David and others and Zach said as well, this is a concept, and I think of it as getting on your OnStar and you're going in a direction that says, I'm sorry you've left the desired path, let's pull us back in and get back online again. We need to do that same thing here. We need to commit as a community that whether this is exactly it or not, this is what we're going to accomplish. Let's not let the numbers scare us away. Let's find ways to hit those numbers. And I think that's the key, as Kyle mentioned about the RiverVision plan before, and all of the things that were accomplished, we have that same opportunity. The public sector will be involved because we think about this as a beauty. I remember we talk about how beautiful it looks. This is great economic development. Companies around here are looking for ways to attract not only young people, but all people, professionals to this community. This is the kind of thing that shows we're a contemporary community moving forward, and that's very important. Places that not only families want to go, but also individuals at all different ages want to be part of as well, and something we can showcase. This is also a lead for other communities around the Quad Cities to join in, and as we talk about the frames, are something that could be duplicated throughout the entire Quad Cities. So again, thank you for all of this. This is an opportunity. Next steps, I would suggest, is that we put together the execution team. That doesn't mean start to do the final construction documents, but we take this throughout the community and start sharing it with not only the for-profit individuals, the foundations, but the citizenry at large to let them know this is a plan. We need to still finalize it. Obviously, the city council still has to be the one that says this is the city council, we're responsible for the riverfront, but I think what we see here is good stuff. We might want to tweak it a little bit, but then let's start taking it around the community and letting people know what we have and let people buy into it not only philosophically, but also financially as well. So again, I thank you all for being here. I know people are going to stay around a little bit if you have any other questions you'd like to ask. And again, we thank you all for being here. This is exciting news. And I think one last thing I just want to share with people have talked about, what are you doing? Well, what Zach outlined is there's a lot that's happened with this plan and with the planning that's gone on. This is another generation of what's happening, and I think we have an opportunity to do something really great, and the wow factor could definitely be part of that. So again, thank you all very much. Have a great weekend, and we'll stay in touch with you all in making this happen. Thank you.